We now have two potential tropical development areas to talk about and impactful weather for many locations in the coming days. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather. Happy Halloween. I hope you're having a great Thursday. I hope this forecast isn't too spooky, but I've got to be honest, there is a lot to talk about right now, some extremely impactful weather happening right now, and we not just have one, but two potential tropical development areas to get into as well. You can see the new yellow area with a broad circulation over Puerto Rico. It's only a 10% chance of development, but regardless, it is bringing extremely heavy rains to portions of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the Leeward Islands and some really gusty winds. And now that area in the Southwest Caribbean we've been monitoring for over a week has a 60% chance of development. So we're going to deep dive into those areas. And as we do so, when I zoom into your spot, let me know in the comment section below where you're viewing from, what the weather has been like. We'll start off with the most impactful weather on this Halloween Thursday, and that's happening right now in the areas that I just mentioned. Again, we have this broad spin right over Puerto Rico. It's going to slowly, and I mean slowly, work its way to the north and to the west. Still just a 10% chance of development. Not too concerned about that, but this system is not moving much, and the amount of rain that it could throw over this area could be excessive in the coming days. I'm talking about right now, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the Leeward Islands, but eventually towards portions of the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and even the Turks and the Caicos. So that's what it looks like on the enhanced satellite imagery. Look at this visible satellite imagery. Look how thick the cloud coverage is. We are just stuck underneath these clouds with the very heavy rainfall. You notice that the clouds are moving in different directions. We have a lot of confluent winds at the surface. It's producing a lot of uplift in the atmosphere. And this broad spin that you can clearly see there right over the mode of passage just is not moving very much. Let's start off with what's been happening on this Halloween Thursday in Puerto Rico. Look at all these greens. This is flash flood warnings that have gone into effect from time to time for the eastern side of the island, from the Fajardo area all the way down towards Yabacoa, but the entire island continues to see pockets of very heavy rain. All that cloud coverage, again, some of it, it'll just be cloudy at times, but a lot of this is moderate to very heavy rainfall and extremely gusty winds. Look at these winds that are sustained, 20, 25 miles an hour with some higher gusts. San Juan's, winds have picked up well over 30 miles an hour from time to time. So you get this heavy rainfall, but then you also get some extremely strong winds that go along with it as well. It's the same situation for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and portions of the Leeward Islands as well. But again, 30 to 35 mile an hour winds. Let's take a live look at the radar here out of Puerto Rico. Going to bring that on, and you're just going to see a ton of green on the map. For my friends in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, you are under a flood watch through Saturday morning. That flood watch has now been extended to include the British Virgin Islands, and that is for 4 to 6 inches of rain for the British Virgin Islands. But just look how widespread the heavy rain is going to be. And these gusty winds will continue as well. These are mainly easterly winds right now towards Vieques, a little bit of a northeast wind there. On over towards San Juan, they've got an easterly breeze. So you have these fresh easterlies, and then this rain just kind of lifting up to the north, but it's just not going anywhere. I mean, just widespread heavy rain. And again, if you live in this area, let me know what's been happening. I do have a video to show you out of Puerto Rico. This was before daybreak. Kevin sent this in. Now, we have to use a little bit of context here. I tried to get a hold of Kevin to get a little bit more information, but what he said is this is the Rio Grande in Puerto Rico. Now, obviously you are looking at a neighborhood, right? You are looking at a street with lights, and you can see the water quickly rushing down that street. Obviously there's some elevation, so if we had to assume that the Rio Grande is on top of that neighborhood, if you will, in higher elevation, and the water is obviously overflowing the banks and rushing down this neighborhood street. Hopefully Kevin can come into the comment section of the video and clarify this, but regardless, look how fast that water is moving. And that's a big concern, because I promise you, this isn't the only area of Puerto Rico that is having that kind of street flooding with that fast of moving water. that can be a serious situation. So again, for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, a flood watch in effect through Saturday morning. The rainfall expected on the northern and the eastern sides of Puerto Rico, Vieques, Culebra, and all of the U.S. Virgin Islands is 3 to 6 inches, but locally 8 to 10 is possible between now and Saturday morning. That is going to lead to fast flash flooding. It's going to lead to river surges. It's going to lead to landslides and mudslides. This is very problematic in eastern Puerto Rico, the islands off of the Puerto Rico eastern coastline, and of course the U.S. Virgin Islands as well. As I mentioned, we also now have a flood watch in effect for the British Virgin Islands, and that's for 4 to 6 inches of rain. That's a flood watch. So obviously the situation here is going from bad to worse. And I don't expect things to get much better until at least the early part of the weekend, guys. This feature is not going to be moving much. So waves of very heavy rain, even some thunderstorm activity and extremely gusty winds will encompass this area over the next 36 hours. Eventually, it will pull west and we'll get heavier rain over the DR and Haiti and the Turks of the Caicos. Right now, back east, we have some significant rain falling through the Leeward Islands right now. I'm talking about Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Bart, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Barbuda. This has mainly just been some rain. There's been a little bit of thunderstorm activity as well. No flood watches in effect for this area as of now, but please check in with your local officials. You know that things can turn on a dime very quickly when we're talking about the potential for excessive rainfall. We've had gustier winds and even thunderstorms just west of places like Montserrat and Guadalupe and Dominica, which are working their way towards the islands late on this Thursday. So if they hold together, we're going to get even gustier winds and heavy rain, maybe as far south as the St. Lucia area. And ahead of that, they've already seen a few showers and storms with a south wind picking up over Barbados, St. Vincent, portions of the Grenadines, and back towards St. Lucia. It's been a little bit quieter so far today in places like Trinidad and Tobago. And I mentioned it in yesterday's video, the northern side of the Lesser Antilles and really the Leeward Islands would be getting the brunt of this because, again, this feature is not really going anywhere. It, over the coming days, will slowly drift to the north and to the west. So it's going to get wetter in places like Punta Cana, La Romana, Santo Domingo, Samana, Puerto Plata areas. They've already had some excessive rainfall the last couple of days. They're kind of on the drier side right now, still some gusty winds. Same situation for the Turks of the Caicos as well. Grand Turk in about a 30-mile-an-hour wind gust, but relatively dry air. But eventually, if this thing kind of holds together, it's just going to slowly spin and work its way to the north and to the west. If I throw back on the visible satellite imagery, and again, this is just a very elongated feature that is going to be a huge rainmaker for these areas. All right, let's talk about the other spot of concern right now. Go back over here. Let's look at our area in orange. So I'm going to bring back on the tropical development areas, and of course we'll continue to look at what's been happening in your area. Again, let me know in the comments section below what's been going on. But obviously this area is now going to be impacting all of the regions west of where this trough is. But this is the one that really has a high likelihood of becoming at least a tropical storm. And Patty is the next name. We're now up to a 60% chance. We've had some wind gusts off the Nicaragua coastline, nearly 50 miles an hour. We've had excessive heavy rain for portions of Panama and Costa Rica. Some of that is drifting back into portions of Nicaragua and Honduras. Again, you can clearly see that there has been a shift west in the potential development area for the National Hurricane Center. So as it kind of creeps to the north, it is eventually forecast to move more north-northwest. The areas that could be potentially impacted would include Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, portions of Cuba, and then all of Central America and the Yucatan. And we'll get down to the models as we move in time. Now, at the present time on this Thursday, we are still relatively quiet in Jamaica. And that far north, we're just going to see some scattered showers, but for Kingston and Mandeville and Maypen and Montego Bay and Negril, still the opportunity for some passing showers. However, the rain chances will of course be going higher as we go closer to the weekend. We haven't had a lot of rain over the Cayman Islands today, but you can clearly see that we've had some wind gusts there near Little Cayman and Cayman Brac of about 35 miles an hour. So extremely breezy conditions, even though the sun has been shining there most of the day. Still more tropical moisture over the Yucatan and portions of Belize and Guatemala. Showers and storms are beginning to develop there. Cancun, Cozumel, Tulum, scattered in nature. It's been a relatively kind of gloomy day, and you can see that along the coastline of Belize, we've had pockets of cloud coverage and some heavy rain from San Pedro, Belize City, portions of the northern coastline of Honduras, Roatan, and Guanaja as well. Got a picture to show you out of Key Cocker there in Belize. That's a beautiful little island off of the coastline. Just look at that spaceship right there. Look at that dark base moving closer to Key Cocker there. Appreciate Henny Heredia sending that in. And again, appreciate all everyone sending in the pictures and the videos. But you get the idea that there's a lot of moisture here off the coastline of Belize, and pockets of heavy rain still will continue to fall in this area. And this is well ahead of obviously this disturbance that's moving in. The Central American Gyre continues to promote hefty showers and storms in this area. Still have really strong winds, but dry conditions over the Bahamas right now. San Salvador, 32-mile-an-hour wind gust. On over towards the west end there in Grand Bahama, about a 25-mile-an-hour wind. Again, gale watch is still in effect mainly for the eastern sides of the islands. 25 to 40 knot winds from time to time, but you guys are all too far north right now in the Bahamas to see any of the heavier rain. We'll see again how this plays out in the coming days. Now we're going to get into the forecast, guys. We talked about what's happening now. Let's see how these two systems evolve. And as we do so, thank you so much for liking this video. If you haven't subscribed to Meteo Mundo, click that subscribe button right now. You want these tropical updates and your daily forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas. Again, I appreciate you guys doing that. It really helps support the channel. Share this with anyone you think is going to get anything out of it. Appreciate finding ways to support the channel. Our memberships, that's the join button, just 99 cents a month. The super things where you could donate any amount of money you'd like. And you can find other ways in the description below as well. Okay, 10% chance with this, but I'm really concerned about the heavy rain. 60% chance with this one. I'm concerned about how this could develop tropically as we go into the late part of the weekend and into early next week. We're going to look at all the models now and how this will play out and look at the rainfall potential as well. So let's get into it. I am going to start off with the GFS model. Now, I will say this, the GFS model in the deterministic is still an eastern outlier, and I don't at this point in time put a lot of weight into how it's developing this system, but it's a tool in the toolbox. Don't want to just completely throw it out right now. We'll look at the ensemble members coming up. I'm also going to show you the icon model today as well. That's a tropical model that's beginning to run on this system. And it's not going to shock me if in short terms we get an invest area here from the National Hurricane Center, and then we'll start to see those spaghetti plots come into play as well. So it just won't be the global models that we'll be looking at. We'll have some of those higher resolution tropical models to be able to give us a little bit better information as well. But you can see that it's about the same solution as yesterday, where the GFS model takes the area in orange and tries to spin it back up towards Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And you can clearly see that that's outside of the eastern envelope where the National Hurricane Center has. It's also the eastern outlier of the GFS ensemble and as well to the east of the European and the ICON models. So we're not going to talk a lot about that one. I do want to show you what the GFS does with this, the area in yellow. All right, it's very broad, but it does try and bring a bit of a spin into the southeast Bahamas here as we get into early next week. Sunday is the 3rd, and you can start to see there into the southeast Bahamas. Now, this would stay very weak, but it would bring an additional pocket of heavy rain and gusty winds. There's not a lot of models that really try and do much with this area, okay? However, if it were to just move in that general direction, it's obviously going to just continue to bring heavier rain and gusty winds to Hispaniola and the Turks and Caicos, southeast Bahamas, portions of Cuba. If it were to kind of move north or fall apart a little bit more, we wouldn't have as much rain. So I'm not worried about this becoming something wrapped up and have a ton of wind with it, but just a broader, elongated area of heavy rain and gusty winds, kind of what they're seeing right now in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. If we look at the wind fields associated with this, and I'll loop that up for you as well. Let me take off the development region here, just a little bit easier to see. Again, on the GFS, you're going to see that this system pulls up towards Hispaniola, never truly develops because, again, it's interacting with a very mountainous island, but I'm discounting this solution so far because it's farther east than anything else that we see. All right, so we're not going to focus too much in on that, but you can see what is happening with this broad trough here, okay? And you can see that we do have a bit of a spin coming through, all right? So we'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, the Hurricane Center put a 10% chance in for a reason, right? So we can't just discount that this isn't going to become a depression or something like that with some impacts. And you can see that right here at the end on the GFS model, if I bring this back out, this would be like the wee hours of Monday morning, the 4th. You know, we would have like a tropical depression teetering on the edge of a tropical storm. I mean, I know we have a nice little center there, but the winds associated with it, 39 miles an hour, are your tropical storm force winds. And again, these are sustained winds. So, you know, we can't rule out a depression trying to develop here in that area. If we look at what the GFS has here, you would have a medium tropical storm, and again, much farther east than where the other models have it, trying to wrap up close to hurricane strength. Again, we can discount this a little bit. I don't want to completely throw it out, but the GFS model on the deterministic is farther off to the east. But now you clearly see the two areas. If I show you the ensembles of the GFS, right? So the deterministic is right about here on Monday. Yeah, we've got one between Cuba and Haiti, but majority of them are farther west. And I promise you, when you look at the European and the icon, they're even farther west than the GFS, right? But we have a higher signal southwest of Jamaica, and that would be on Monday, right? If I loop this, so that was just a still shot of Monday. If we go through time, you'll start to see over the weekend the development here in the Southwest Caribbean, okay? And then an eventual push west, all right? I want to be clear, all the models pull this west eventually. It's just how far east does it develop first before it goes west. By the time we get into the wee hours of Wednesday morning, the cluster on the GFS ensemble is in the Northwest Caribbean. So passing close to Jamaica, Cayman Islands, Cuba, portions of the Yucatan, and Central America. Again, I still don't want to focus on any one area without having an invest area yet and a low-level center to form. And you can clearly see there's still a lot of spread in the ensembles, but we're starting to narrow that window down a bit. And then this would be the one on the GFS ensemble for our second system that's in Puerto Rico right now, okay? Not many of the GFS and European models actually develop it, but it's possible, it's plausible. This is the European ensemble as a snapshot Tuesday morning. First of all, a much higher concentration and clustering in the Western Caribbean. Notice that we're not anywhere near the Dominican Republic and Haiti with most of these. We are much closer to Jamaica and to areas to the south and to the west. Some of them are a little bit faster towards Cuba, but most of them with a high concentration. Now, I want to be clear, most of these ensemble members are tropical storm strength. There are a few, if you see the two digits start with an 8 or a 9, that could potentially be hurricanes, okay? So we have to also start thinking about how intense this could end up becoming, all right? These are the ensemble members of the European model that develop our 10% chance area, again, near the Turks and the Caicos and the Bahamas. And that would be a weaker system there. Notice there's not nearly as many that develop this system compared to the 60% chance in the Western Caribbean, which, in my opinion, is just going to go higher and higher. There is a very high likelihood that this becomes a tropical storm, and Patty is the next name. If we look at the European ensemble members, so now we're letting this run at a time, and we'll stop it here again on late Wednesday, so a little bit longer in time, but you saw what happened, right? Developing near Jamaica and then moving north and west. So the European model pulls the system into the Northwest Caribbean as well. You don't get a lot here in this area. There was a little bit of development, maybe Monday, Tuesday, and then it weakens. So even if this does become a depression or a very weak tropical storm, which I think is probably the highest end, it probably goes away in a 36, 48 hour period at most. Certainly this one appears to be much stronger. okay? Now, I've stopped it here for a reason, because obviously the next thing on the doorstep would be, if this were to develop, what would happen when it gets into the Gulf of Mexico? We're too far down the road to talk about that yet. I promise you, if I let this European model loop, the ensemble go past late Wednesday, it's gonna go like this. I mean, literally, some of them go here, some of them go here. It's not worth talking about as of yet. There is nothing to put any weight on to the European or the GFS models past about this time frame, okay? We see a much more concentration through Tuesday, Wednesday here. And beyond that, it really is a very large spread and not worthy to discuss as of right now. Tomorrow, Saturday, as we get down the road, and the members of this European model and the GFS come maybe to a little bit better agreement to what could be happening into the Gulf after that, obviously it bears a lot of discussion, and we'll get into it as necessary. Told you I'd show you the icon model. You can see that right now. This is early Sunday developing, moving fairly close. Well, let's see here. Did I not get that fully looped up? All right. I maybe didn't have it fully looped. Is it going to stop there? Okay. Apologize for that, but you can clearly see that over the weekend, it develops it here, okay? And I will say this, it pulls it north and west and makes it a hurricane as we get into early next week. All right, that's the icon model, but you can see the development area is the same as the GFS and the European model. It's not pulling it as far east as the GFS. It's much more in line with the European model, and then eventually does take it on that northeast track, but the icon is one that does strengthen it fairly quickly. All right, so let's talk about the areas that need to be paying attention to both spots. Okay, again, areas of impact for the disturbance in the Southwest Caribbean that we just talked about. It's Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Central America, the Yucatan, and Cuba. That really just, again, pay attention. We're not talking about making any preparations or plans yet. We are still too early in that stage, but based on what we just showed you, we have to keep a very, very close eye in those areas. For the disturbance near Puerto Rico, the areas of impact are going to be Puerto Rico and the Leeward Islands, and then down the road in the next couple of days, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, the Turks and the Caicos, and the Southeast Bahamas. The wind is not going to be nearly as impactful as this storm here. It's not going to be nearly as powerful. That being said, the amount of rain that could fall in these areas could be excessive. We already have the flood watches I mentioned for the British and U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and additional areas could fall under flash flood watches, flash flood warnings, advisories, what have you. Please check in with your local officials, but in these areas, just know that either it's happening right now or in the next 48 hours, you could have some excessive rainfall in those locations. Obviously, surf and sea conditions are going to be very high. The gale watch is in effect through tomorrow in the Bahamas. We'll see if this disturbance and what it does as it pulls into the Southeast Bahamas, how that could still influence some very strong easterlies in the swells in the open waters of the Atlantic. Again, this is based off the GFS, so you're going to see this system pull too far east, or more than likely pull too far east. Again, we don't want to discount anything as of yet, but it doesn't look like the scenario this far east is more than likely the higher chance to happen, but obviously this is going to come a lot of wind and waves as well. Rainfall totals are outrageous. Just so many areas that are going to have to concern yourselves with the opportunity for heavy rainfall, excessive rainfall, and flooding. Again, on the European model, and it's very clear to see, by the way, where the European model pulls the east side of the storm. Remember, as this develops, the east side is going to be the wet side. So even if the storm is southwest of Jamaica, Jamaica is going to get the strongest winds and the heaviest rainfall being on the east side. You can clearly see that, right? Look at all of the rainfall, especially down in Nicaragua and Panama and Costa Rica here, right? Look at all that heavy rain, and then the Caribbean coastlines of the Yucatan, Belize, Guatemala, Honduras. Obviously, the secondary area is the Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, the northeast coastlines, the Dominican Republic, northern coastline of Haiti, and then portions of the Turks and the Caicos and eastern Cuba. All the areas in red are at least 4 inches of rain or 100 millimeters, but there'll be a lot more than that. 8-10 inches of rain, absolutely plausible. Again, that is the forecast for the National Weather Service in San Juan to have up to 8 to 10 inches of rain in the eastern sides of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, Vieques, and Culebra. So it's excessive. This is the GFS model. Let me drop off the formation area, and as I do, I just have it set to go out 5 days because normally that's about all we need to talk about. But let's go out until Monday night. And again, on the GFS, you can see that the heaviest rain is farther east on the eastern side of where it's trying to develop the storm. So more than likely, it's not going to be as much there. Although Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, I think we'll start to get better rain chances in the coming days. I don't expect as much rain over the Windward Islands. As we've mentioned, you get into the portions of the Leeward Islands here, and there's where you could have some of that excessive rainfall. But certainly for portions of the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, some of this is probably even not enough. You can just see how expansive that heavy rain could be. And eventually, as the GFS model keeps this going towards the southeast Bahamas, again, we average this out. I don't think we're gonna get a 9-inch total just east of Mayaguana and only have 2, but a few inches of rain is absolutely possible. And then you can see the excessive rainfall coming up portions of the Caribbean as well. Jamaica wouldn't have as much on the GFS, but still several inches of rain here. It would just depend on how that ultimately goes. And then the northwest Bahamas would be an area, would still have some gusty winds, but much drier. Okay, real quick, again, let's summarize this before we wrap things up. 10% chance of development in this area, but I'm very concerned about the amount of rain that could fall in portions of the Greater Antilles and the Lesser Antilles, including the Leeward Islands. 60% chance of development here, more than likely really getting going over the weekend, eventually by most models turning north and then north and west with higher wind impacts for this area, but still some very heavy rainfall is likely as well. That's why I'm saying, friends, there's a lot of our areas with impactful weather in the days to come. All right, you can follow us across all of social media to get your updates. Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video, it's mymediamundo@gmail.com. And with as much weather as we expect over the next several days, I appreciate those pictures and videos. Thank you for taking the time to send those in, mymediamundo@gmail.com. Have a specific question about the forecast, you can drop in the comment section below. And while you're down there, again, thank you for liking and subscribing. I'm back tomorrow with all the newest information. Until then, happy Halloween. I'll see you Friday right here at Meteo Mundo.